Vybz Kartel case, even though that him alone, you know, it's like when them say SSL thief the money them, so it's not ongo bolt alone money, but because him is the main factor in it. People always call the Vybz Kartel case.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all are doing good. Hope you all are doing great. So your boy here come across this one wherein the main headline is Vybz Kartel case. Muta will be interviewing PAULA Llewellyn. Plus, you guys will be also hearing from Dr. Umar Johnson. Speaking of 7 sins. So guys, this one is gonna be really a warm one. So you wanna stay tuned. And don't forget, I'm here on the Black Unity program. So feel free to leave a like and subscribe to this channel if you're new. With that being said, let's go ahead and hear what Muta got to say in this one. My people, let's watch.
Vybz Kartel case, even though that him alone, you know, it's like when them say SSL thief the money them, so it's not ongo bolt alone money, but because him is the main factor in it. People always call the Vybz Kartel case.
Mr. Palmer and other persons were convicted of murder at the trial. Then the matter went to the appeal court. They appealed conviction and sentence. And you had many days of arguments between their lawyers and lawyers for the crown, for the prosecution. At the end of the day...
All right, so let me talk about this thing. You know, I get a press release here, but the press release, if you just read the press release and don't get it from the lady's mouth, I would be doing injustice to it. So that is why I call you, because I don't want to just read the press release. It's about the Privy Council refusal to the application for leave to argue additional grounds in the case of Sean Campbell, Adisa Palmer, Kaira Jones, and Andre St. John. I want you to really explain to the IRFM listeners. It's a total different kind of listeners, them. The IRFM listeners. What is this happening here now? Because there's a lot of true things that happen. Say, boy, I'm not going to come out of jail now because they refuse this and refuse that. So you are the best person to...
Well, the thing about it is, I'm just a humble, how should I put it, prosecutor who is going to make an attempt to explain. The thing is, you know that Mr. Palmer and other persons were convicted of murder at the trial. Then the matter went to the appeal court. They appealed conviction and sentence. And you had many days of arguments between their lawyers and lawyers for the crown, for the prosecution. At the end of the day, the judges upheld the conviction and sentence. However, there were arguments in law where their lawyers sought to persuade the Court of Appeal to give them what we call leave to appeal to the Privy Council in England. The Privy Council, according to our structure, legal structure, is still the highest appellate body for Jamaica. So the Court of Appeal in Jamaica did grounds and allowed them to appeal to the Privy Council. Now, along the way, while the matter is there waiting to be heard in England, before the Privy Council is there, the lawyers in England and here certain grounds and allowed them to appeal to the Privy Council. Now, along the way, while the matter is there waiting to be heard in England, before the Privy Council is there, the lawyers in England and here for Mr. Palmer and the other accused asked permission of the court in Jamaica for the cell phone, which is at the heart of the Crown's case, the cell phone belonging to Mr. Palmer, to be examined by their expert. The court here granted that permission on the condition that the cell phone is to be examined in the presence of the expert, the cyber expert, prosecution. So they were able to examine the phone. So what they did is sought leave from the Privy Council, and they did this in writing. So at the Privy Council, at the Court of Appeal here too, you have to submit written submissions. Then the Privy Council now will decide whether they need to hear from you. So written submissions were submitted by Mr. Palmer's lawyers, as well as the lawyers in England for the Crown, to do what we call adduce fresh evidence. That is fresh evidence from the expert, their expert who examined the phone. And also, they decided to seek permission of the Privy Council to advance or to argue additional grounds that they didn't argue in the Court of Appeal in Jamaica as part of their application for leave, permission to go to the Privy Council. So detailed submissions were submitted by the lawyers for the appellants, as Mr. Palmer and the others, as well as lawyers for the Crown. And we have English barristers as well in England acting for the Crown. And so the Privy Council, having considered the written submissions, decided to refuse the application for leave to adduce the fresh evidence. That is the evidence that they wanted to bring before the Privy Council to try to establish that there was some improper interference with the cellular phone of Mr. Palmer while it was in the custody of the police. So they refused permission to do that, and they also refused permission for his lawyers to advance additional grounds of appeal, in respect of which permission had not been previously granted by the Court of Appeal in Jamaica. So with that, there remains the substantial appeal against conviction and sentence, which will be heard by the Privy Council at an appointed date.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a question. This thing around the cell phone was what Adidja Palmer lawyers was wanted to advance in the court, and they passed that already in the local court. The local court did already throw it down.
No. So what happened? Remember, the prosecution centered a lot of its case on the contents of the cell phone, the voice notes, and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So at the Privy Council, I mean, this thing has gone now. It has gone through Court of Appeal. And at the Privy Council, his lawyers now wanted permission to adduce what we call in law fresh evidence. So whatever the expert found and has put in a report, they wanted to be able to call the expert who would swear on the Bible or affirm, as the case may be, and give that evidence to the Privy Council up there, or so put the written report before them. So that is what they refused, as well as additional grounds that they had formulated.
So you have any idea what the new evidence would be or could be?
Well, what would happen, is that written submissions, perhaps it would be what the expert found, but written submissions of this would be put before the Privy Council. And the reason why it was not available at the time of the trial Because there's a concept in law called fresh evidence. Also at the appellate court in Jamaica. So for it to be able to pass muster, it would have to have not been available at the time of the trial, and it would have to be credible, basically. So it is for the Privy Council, having looked at the written submission, to decide as a matter of law whether they could give that permission as a matter of law. Because remember, Mr. Muta Baruka, when we're dealing with law, some people think that the law can be an act, but when you're dealing with law, it's an objective situation. It's not about how you feel or whether the person who is appealing is popular. It's about what the case law that has been decided over the years, what it has to say on the point, and the material that the lawyer, whether for the Crown or for the defense, is going to put before the Privy Council to say, this is why, and this is the case law that supports that. So they looked at all the written submissions and they refused those applications.
What Adidja Palmer lawyers are asking for, is there a precedence to that they could bring to the Privy Council or the court down here?
Well, if you're looking at the concept of fresh evidence, it's a concept known to law. The concept of fresh evidence, it's a concept, well-known concept known to law. But the thing is, whether the material or what they're seeking to advance as the reason why they didn't put it forward before, or of what import it's going to be in the scheme of things, it's whether, as far as the judges are concerned, it is justified by the case law, or whether the case law can be cited to justify them. If they don't find that the case law, the objective case law, and the material presented, that it match, then they are not going to allow you.
Okay.
It has happened here in Jamaica.
So what will happen now? What will happen now? What
happens? They having refused these applications. The main substantive appeal now against conviction and sentence will be heard by the Privy Council at a date that they will set. You understand? So it is substantive appeal now, where they are saying, based on this evidence, based on this particular ground of appeal that we are advancing, we should not have been convicted and we should not have, and therefore the sentence should be set aside. So what they want is for the conviction to be quashed and the sentence set aside. But when you are in the appeal court, it's not a trial of the case all over again. Right? Like when the jury sit and hear the evidence and hear the witnesses give the testimony and hear cross-examination, that is not what happens on appeal. On appeal, it's all about the law. Right? So you will have about 5 judges at the Privy Council who will sit and listen to arguments in law, looking at the circumstances of the evidence that was put forward, but arguments only in law would be made by the attorneys, the lawyers for both sides, both for the appellant and for the Crown. And
so is there any time granted this thing would proceed or continue, or I'm have to sit down there another 7 years to find out?
No. I mean, the thing is that I would think somewhere before the end of the year. That may be set for their calendar, because remember they have other cases that they have to hear from other countries in the Caribbean, from countries in Asia. They have other cases that they have to hear. So they are the ones who set the calendar, and then they notify the lawyers on both sides.
Well, you have made it clear. I mean, you said better than if I just read it off on the paper. So
okay.
Yeah, so we give thanks. We give thanks for your contribution here. And
Well,
you are
thank you very
and you
much.
are still the director of public prosecution.
Yes, when last I checked, I'm still the director of public
Because
prosecution.
I heard some squabbling going around the place. That it's time you go because of your age.
And you know, I went to the
You are
gym this
listening to the
morning.
Black Radar YouTube
Oh, yes?
channel.
I went to
Hit
the
that
gym this
subscribe
morning
button
because I
and keep
tried to do a
listening.
little walking and lift a little weight, something, and somebody said to me, "Boy, Miss Llewellyn, what a way your age going all over the place." I said, "But what is a very good thing is that everybody says, well, you look much younger than what you actually are." I think
All right.
I like to smile.
Yes,
Right? And God has been good to me in terms of my genes. And I'm going to leave you with this. I tell the story all the time. A few years ago, about 3-4 years after I become DPP, maybe 5 years, and I'm in the supermarket, Muta, and a man comes up to me and says, "You know, I love your smile. I'm glad to meet you, man. I see you on the TV. I'm glad to meet you." I said, "Okay, you know, that's nice." So I noticed that he wasn't moving. So I looked at him now. I said, "Is everything all right?" He comes up to me close and look in my face and say, "But what a way the stress agree with you." Right? So God is good to me. And perhaps it is. I work very hard. I work long hours into the night. I go to court. Sometimes in some really tough cases, I supervise 57 lawyers at my office.
Oh,
They prosecute all over the island of Jamaica in the Court of Appeal, gun court. Sometimes I go to court in different parts of the island too because I lead from the front. And I am accountable for all decisions made by counsel in my name and on my behalf.
okay.
So, and then
Head cook, you're the head cook and buckle watcher. You're the head cook and buckle watcher.
I'm accountable. I'm accountable to the public of Jamaica because your taxes pay my salary.
Okay.
But God continues to be good to me because, and I'm grateful, that somehow the stress seems to agree with me. It's like that's my makeup.
Okay, give thanks, you know.
I give thanks all the time. So I all the very best to you and your listeners at RFM, and you have a good afternoon and take good care of yourselves. Okay, bye.
That was Miss PAULA Llewellyn, and she's the director of public prosecution, kind of breaking it down for the listeners about this new development in the Vybz Kartel case, even though it's not him alone. You know, it's like when them say SSL thief the money them, so it's not Ungo Bolt alone money, but because him is the main factor in it. People always call the Vybz Kartel case. Gambler also, Kaira Jones and Andre St. John. That is the case that is in question here. So we'll be hearing more of it. As you should say, by the end of this year, we have to call her back to hear what is going on with this case, because a whole heap of people are champ on it. Whole heap of people.
So my people, we are gonna go ahead and hear what Dr. Umar Johnson got to say in this one.
As a race of people is deliberate, it is organized. It's amazing how much black people blame themselves for the causes of this situation, as opposed to being able to wake themselves up into a larger consciousness to truly see that what goes on with you has been engineered. The psychotropic drug movement, totally engineered. This whole ADHD thing, conduct disorder, it's all been engineered. It comes out of the Federal Anti-Violence Initiative program, which comes out of the 1980s. If you go back in your memory, you will remember that in the 1980s, the United States government was pouring money into a research project to determine whether or not there was a gene in black men that predisposed them to violence. Everybody remember that? It was about 30 years ago. Because of the massive outcry against that movement, it went underground. Most of us think that it went away. It never went away. One thing you got to understand about the United States government or any imperial power, whatever it starts, it finishes. And this is where we go wrong. Whatever it starts, it finishes. Okay? So it went underground and it came back as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, conduct disorder, opposition to defiant disorder, all of which come out of not only the federal anti-violence initiative, but the new COINTELPRO against the black community. For example, any black boy in America who's diagnosed with a disruptive behavior disorder, which basically means that at some future point in time, they could cause a serious problem to the establishment, the FBI automatically has access to their psychological evaluation reports. Let me say that again. Any black boy in America diagnosed with a disruptive behavior disorder, the FBI automatically has access to their psychological reports. Because as J. Edgar Hoover said, the goal of the FBI is to do what? Prevent the rise of another black messiah. We also know that the FBI was created on who? The Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. J. Edgar Hoover's first full-time job with the FBI was to do what? Bring down greatest leader of the 19th century, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. So COINTELPRO is still here. It's in the form of the disruptive behavior disorders, engineered by the government, the FBI, and who's the third factor? The drug companies. One thing you got to understand about psychology, it's no longer a true science. Psychology has become psychoeconomics. The makers of Ritalin and Strattera and Prozac and Cycler, and the list goes on, the makers of these major black psychotropic drugs are the #1 financiers of the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the National Institute of Mental Health. What I'm trying to get you to understand is much of the diagnoses, much of the disruptive behavior diagnoses that we use on black children were paid for by the drug companies. The drug exists before the diagnosis. You need to understand this. The drug exists before the diagnosis. The diagnosis is created to feed the prescription. The diagnosis is created to feed the description. To give you a quick point in what I mean, I think I have with me a copy of the DSM-4, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. You should have a copy of this. Buy one if you don't. You need it if you're a parent, if you work with children. This is the Bible of psychology and psychiatry. Anything we diagnose the dominant structure of this society will forget that they're Africans. Deadly sin number one. Let's talk about abortion. This is a quote. Several years ago, 17,000 aborted black babies were found in a dumpster outside a pathology laboratory in Los Angeles. 12 to 15,000 were observed to be black. Did you know that? 17,000 aborted babies in LA. What it's not telling you is that the dumpster where these 17,000 black aborted babies were found was right near a United States government testing laboratory. The United States still has not ratified the 1948 United Nations Genocide Conventions, which made crime of genocide an international crime. Why has the United States government not ratified that document from the Geneva Convention pertaining to genocide? Because the government continues to be, has always been, about the business of getting for health recommended mandatory abortion for any unmarried girl found to be within the first 3 months of pregnancy, and mandatory sterilization of any such girl given birth out of wedlock for a second time. However, Fannie Lou Hamer intervened and it was canceled. And everybody should know who Fannie Lou Hamer was. That powerful black woman who never gets enough props from our community for what she did for blacks during the 60s. By herself. Death threats, beatings, etc., etc. And Fannie Lou Hamer found out about this attempt that was supposed to be pushed through Congress to force black women to get abortions. And she intervened, and it went what? Pushed underground. Because anything that they start, they always finish. In fact, social economic status. So a poor black woman is still 3 times more likely to have an abortion than a poor white woman. Do you want to know why? Because unconsciously, subconsciously, when you hate yourself, as we have been taught, the last thing you want is to see something else that looks just like you. And we go through great lengths to get rid of it. Michael Jackson, much respect to him, is a firm example of what self-hatred can do to a person. And I got a lot of respect for Mike. Although I dislike the fact that he married outside of his race, although I dislike the fact that he glorified white people. Drug administration, for the first time in history, said what? That you could give a child adult psychotropic medicine. Nearly every drug that we give these babies was designed for adults. But in 2000, which was only 9 years ago, the FDA said, yes, you can give him and her drugs that want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. This is her words. I'm giving you her, the mother of Planned Parenthood. And do you know that Planned Parenthood sites are disproportionately located inside or right next to black communities? Did you know that? Nationally. Now, there's more white people than black people. We only, what, 17% of the entire populace. So how is it that most of the Planned Parenthood sites are with intrauterine device and supported a law requiring forced sterilization of women who sought public assistance? Did you know that? Which was law in 38 of the United States. It was never adopted federally. But just because they don't say it in DC doesn't mean any of the 50 states can do it on their own. It's what we call states' rights. Did you know that? Up until the 80s, a significant portion of states in this union, if you got public assistance, you were also sterilized. We thought they were only doing it in Africa and in the Caribbean. It was right here. I'll give you one better. I'll give you one better. Also up until the 1970s in some states in America, if your IQ score, if you and here you get away with murder because you have a so-called diagnosis. You ADHD, you conduct disorder, you ED. So when you mess up, you don't get in trouble. I said, listen to me, young man. When you get outside and you start mouthing off at one of them cops, and he tell you to stay still and you jumping around anyway, and you tell him that you got ODD and you can't control it, he don't have to respect that. When you run into the law, no mental disorder is above the law. Do you understand? So when we teach these boys that you can't control yourself unless you have a pill, we are crippling. One of your great high school legends was arrested for doing something stupid because everybody around him told him that he was going to be some great football or basketball player, and it just didn't happen. And what really bothers me is I want to know why we let our boys settle for being basketball players and not owning the team. Why do they settle for being football players and not owning the team? You want to be the quarterback? How about being an owner who writes everybody's check? Ownership is the opposite of slavery.
Alright, so my people, this one was indeed a warm one. And when you don't know, you can leave an honest comment down in the comment section. And also, your own opinion. And when you don't know, say, me there upon the Black